today. In Washington, I'm Lana Zach for ABC News. Now back to you.
All right, Lana, thanks. And news of the tragedy is sending shockwaves across the country. Our Brandon Pope reached out to the pastor of South Bend's oldest black church early this morning, shortly after the shooting.
And he joins us live now at Olivet African Methodist Episcopal Church with his reaction. Brandon, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Well, Pastor Rick Jackson, he tells me that he is just, his heart is really heavy from this. And also he thinks his church is devastated as well from what he's gathered. And that's understandable. You don't expect something like this to ever happen at a place of worship. Now, we sat down for a chat shortly after he learned of this shooting. And we discussed what he feels contributes to problems like this when it comes to shootings and violence, and also what he hopes the churches here locally can do about it. Olivet African Methodist Episcopal is South Bend's oldest black church.
We're 145 years old this year.
This morning, their pastor is speaking out, touched by a horrific shooting at another historic black church nearly 900 miles away.
It's awful tragic. The tragedy of this whole situation and this violence that's in our country.
Shortly after the news broke, Olivet AME's leader, Pastor Rick Jackson, spoke with ABC 57 about what he feels the root of the problem is.
I think it's just another evidence of evil that's in our society.
Jackson says he fears a lack of attention to mental illness also contributes to these tragedies.
They show up in churches, they show up in other places, and they haven't been medicated, they haven't been tended to.
And while churches like Olivet AME serve as a blanket for the mentally ill,
it's not all the time that we are able to take care of them because we don't always have maybe the medication that they need.
Now this historic worship group is calling on all the black churches in South Bend to unite in faith.
And have some type of observance for this. These are brothers and sisters who were just tragically killed.
Sending their love to a community and a nation that desperately needs it right now.
Asked all the congregations of South Bend and all over the world to pray for Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church and the congregation there.
Now, Pastor Jackson says they do not have a set time yet for that vigil. They just know they want to have it sometime early this morning. They're going to be working with all the other churches and black churches here in South Bend, him and his bishop, to try to get that together and get a prayer vigil together so they can help try to cope with this and the feelings that everyone might have. We'll be sure to let you know when that happens. I'm live in South Bend. Brandon Pope, ABC 57 News.
Brandon, thanks for that report. Our Rosie Woods continues our coverage now with a look at the church's deep historical roots. She joins us live from the newsroom with more. Rosie.
Hey guys, good morning. I mean, it's important to understand that this isn't the first time that this church has seen unrest or possible discrimination. It actually seems to be a part of their history dating all the way back to 1787. Now, according to the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church website, in 1787, Richard Allen, who later became the bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded the Free African Society. He did so after leaving the St. George's Methodist Church in Philadelphia due to unkind treatment and restrictions placed upon the worshipers of African descent. Just a few years later, in 1822, the church was investigated for its involvement in a planned slave revolt. They had Denmark Vesey. He was one of the church's founders, and he organized a major slave uprising in Charleston and began to organize a slave rebellion in December 1821. But authorities were informed of the plot before it could take place. Now, the plot created mass hysteria in the area, the South and in Charleston specifically, which is what we're seeing here today. But coming up in the next half hour, I'll have more information on this church as well as how this is still happening. Just a couple months ago, we had an incident just like this. I'll have more details coming up next. I'm live in the newsroom this morning. Rosie Woods, ABC 57 News.
And new this hour, we've learned the president of the NAACP is offering his condolences for the families of the victims, saying the organization was created to fight racial hatred. He says, quote, 106 years later, we're faced today with another mass hate crime. There's no greater coward than a criminal who enters a house of God and slaughters innocent people engaged in the study of Scripture.
And if you are just joining us, we're following breaking news out of Charleston, South Carolina. That's where an armed white man walked into a church Bible study group last night around 9 o'clock and started firing shots. The church where it happened is a historic African-American church. Officials there are calling the mass shooting a hate crime. 8 people's bodies were found in the church. Another victim died at a hospital. So far, they've not been identified. The suspect was caught on surveillance cameras, but no pictures have been released just yet. He's described only as a white man in his 20s and is still on the run. The FBI now joining in the search this morning.
And stay with us as this story unfolds this morning for our continued coverage. Now we want to switch gears a little bit and get a check of the forecast this morning as we're expecting some more storms to hit again today.
Now let's send it right over now to meteorologist Greg Bobus. Hey, Greg.
Hey guys, yes we are. Temperatures right now we're in the 70s for the most part, upper 60s to 70. It's humid outside with a chance for showers and storms later today. Take a look at current temperatures sitting at 68 in South Bend, 70 in Knox, Goshen, and Warsaw, 77 later on this afternoon. And we will see the increasing chance for showers and storms. A few of those could be heavier, so we'll look at the threats if we see any severe weather, what those could be. Just note that, again, today stormy, tomorrow your weekend on the water forecast. The best day of the 3 days, 77 and mainly sunny. The weekend, more showers and storms return. A lot to talk about. We'll see you back here in about 2 minutes.
All right, sounds good, Greg. Thank you. It's now 6:09. A teen is still recovering nearly 2 weeks after a bear attack.
We will detail the scary moments on a camping trip with his dad in Ohio. Plus,
she has held over time an immutable belief that Slender Man is real.
A hearing is held to determine if a now 13-year-old girl will be tried in adult court for a near-deadly stabbing.